Book apps are among the most exciting new developments for 21st century children's authors. They offer unlimited creativity for the author and unbridled imagination for young readers. Now, you might think that creating a book app, selling it, and promoting it is a very difficult process, but today we have our resident expert on the subject of book apps, Karen Robertson, here to tell you otherwise. Now, Karen's a regular person, just a writer like you, who has become a very successful children's book app author. She's also president and co-founder of the Book App Alliance and creator of the Author's Guide to Book Apps. There's really no one on the planet who's better suited to teach ordinary children's writers how to become book app authors than Karen, and we are so thrilled to have her as our resident expert here on Write for Kids. I recently sat down with Karen. She was calling in from her home in Austin, Texas, and we had a fantastic conversation about how to get started as a book app author, what a book app is, and we also have a bonus feature at the end for Children's Book Insider readers, all about the biggest mistakes that people make when they start creating book apps and how to avoid them. It's really a fantastic conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. And here's Karen.
Well, thank you very much, Karen, for being here and for being our go-to expert on Write for Kids. It's really exciting. You're going to have a lot to share over the months ahead about apps, and you're definitely the right person to do it. So thank you very much for being part of Write for Kids.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be a part of Write for Kids and your new manifesto. I'm very excited about what you're doing.
Well, you know, one of the main thing that we talk about is impacting the lives of children around the world. And what's so cool about apps is that what we're finding out from our charity partners is that many kids are getting tablets and getting donated cell phones. So they're getting access to apps. Apps will actually be one of the primary currencies that will allow authors to speak to kids in America, in Canada, in Europe, and all over the world because of the access that they have. Sometimes they don't have access to a laptop computer, but they have access to smartphones and to tablets to be able to play the apps.
Yeah, I think there are two things there. One is that, globalization is the most exciting thing I find about, having my books in a digital format because, people from all over the world can easily download apps. We've had my apps downloaded in nearly 100 countries, and I don't have to worry about exchange rates or anything, and it means that kids all over the world are enjoying the Treasure Pie apps that I've done. But the other thing that's interesting about, the tablet is that it's opening up a new world of how to experience story, and that's the other thing that gets me really excited. I started writing children's books because both of my kids are dyslexic. And so I was looking for ways to bring in many senses, deliver a multi-sensory reading experience for them. And I did that with my printed book because it had treasure chests and toys, and it was a very physical, interactive book. But the digital space let me experiment with multi-sensory reading in a whole new way. And that's what authors have at their disposal when they go digital. All of a sudden they can bring in sound and touch and even nonlinear storytelling, and it's such an exciting creative option as well as that global reach option for writers today.
Well, let's take a step back, and for people who are completely unfamiliar with what an app might be, just define what a book app is.
Yeah, a book app is such an exciting new thing in reading for children. It's a way to read a book in a digital format. And what people do, or kids do, is they read stories on a device like a smartphone or a tablet. And it's amazing the way that you bring all of the senses into books when they're in the book app format. It's a multi-sensory reading experience because not only do you have a great story, but you can also add in touch by adding in interactivity where you have to touch something to engage with the story or come into the story in some way. You can have sound, narration, sound effects, music. It's a really neat way for kids to engage in books. And the reason I got involved in it was my kids are both dyslexic, and especially my younger son struggles with reading in a very big way. He even goes to a school for dyslexics. But for him, when he engages in reading, it's the only way he chooses to read for fun. He can listen to a story with the narration on, he can turn it off, and then he can move things around, and stories come back to life for him in a way that he can engage with them independently without me reading to him. So, the neat thing about book apps is just the way that you can deliver story in an exciting way. One of the questions that does come up with people is what's the difference between a book app and an ebook? And really a book app is an ebook on steroids because they're both digital books. They both generally tend to have turning pages and possibly narration and even some sound effects. But a book app can do more than what an ebook does. And we have an infographic, which we'll put up here in just a moment, that was done by Chris Pedersen, who's one of my colleagues. And it explains, kind of what the difference between a book app and an ebook is. But really, the book app is the where the market is. That's where kids are spending much more money. My colleagues who have their books formatted for both formats, both ebooks and book apps, have far more downloads in the book app space. And we have review sites that support that space. So right now in the children's category anyway, we're seeing a lot more of the market in the book app area than the ebook area. So I hope that gives you a little bit of information about book apps and what they are.
And ultimately, the best way for people to find out about them are to experience them. If you have a tablet or an iPad, if you have a smartphone, download some. If you don't, maybe you could borrow some. Go to your local library. They might have some tablets that you can mess around with there. Or you can just even look on video. There's some YouTube videos that show what an app is. But there's really nothing like the experience of having the tablet and start touching things pop out and things happen. And even as an adult, it's a blast. I can only imagine what a 10-year-old must think when they get this book and they're reading the book and then suddenly they can touch something and just explosions of color and sound and animation. There's augmented reality, which is astonishing, where through an app, the characters can actually come into the room with you and be almost like they're surrounding the reader. It's really incredible, the amount of creativity. And after all, we're creative people as writers. We should embrace any opportunity to enhance our own creativity. And this is so exciting. It doesn't replace a book. It's just a different kind of book. And it's a different kind of reading experience. I find it really, really thrilling. But again, I think we can only talk about it so much. People just need to go out and see them for themselves.
Yeah, if you think a picture's worth 1,000 words, using and experiencing an app is worth 10,000.
Right. And the last thing to point out for people who might be a little confused is how they're delivered. So an app is a standalone piece of software. You download it, it sits by itself. You don't need anything else to read it. It exists as its own entity. An ebook is something you would download through an ebook store and read through Kindle or Nook or some other ebook reader. So it's not a standalone. It exists within the confines. And that's probably why apps have so much more opportunity in terms of creativity, because you aren't constricted by somebody else's platform.
And they have a lot more functionality as well. So you're able to do a lot more with a book app than you are with an ebook. With ebooks, you're very limited in what you're actually able to do within the format itself.
Yeah.
So, there are a number of different...
I think that, if the point is to get kids excited about reading, this is, to me, just a huge weapon in doing that. This is really a great way to get kids excited about what is still the printed word. It's still there, exists for them to look at, but it comes alive as well as they're flipping through it. But this will get kids really excited about reading, or kids like your son, for whom this is the entryway to a lifetime of reading. I just think it's so exciting, and I love apps, and I think where they're going to go is just incredible.
Yeah, it is an exciting space to be in, for sure.
So then for people who are listening and who are maybe intimidated by the idea, they've seen some of these amazing apps, and there are some incredible things up there. I mean, there's this thing called augmented reality that is simply amazing when you hold the tablet up and somehow it affects the world around you. The characters are in the world around you. Amazing stuff. But it is very intimidating to new authors, the idea of how in the world can I even conceive of that. An entryway into creating an app isn't necessarily having to go that far. You can still create a relatively simple app. And the advantage you're having is you can do a few things you can't do in Kindle or Nook, but also you're available on a platform and in a deliverable way that a lot of kids and a lot of parents can access if they can't necessarily access ebooks.
Definitely, that's right. And I think the other thing is you made a really good point that, a lot of authors say, I'm not technically inclined and there's no way I can do this. Well, I'm not technically inclined and I've been doing this for 3 years. And in fact, that's why I started writing and speaking and teaching about how writers can turn their books into apps, because it's really a step-by-step process. So if you just kind of go through the process, there are people who can help you with the technical issues if you know what questions to ask. And so that's one of the things that I'm really focused on, is helping people understand what questions to ask so that the technical parts aren't scary. And you don't have to go to augmented reality to start with. There's no reason why you can't publish your book in a much more simpler format. In fact, it's actually better to have a great, well-written story that has really nice professional production value, and don't worry about all the bells and whistles unless that's part of your storytelling. Because if you do the bells and whistles badly, that's going to impact your story in a really negative way.
Now, by the way, folks who are watching and are thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? Remember, this is just a first conversation with Karen, who is now going to be part of Write for Kids and is going to be teaching you throughout. She has courses and products and coaching and all kinds of stuff to make it easy for you to do it. So don't worry so much right now about how you're going to get an app done. Just know that it's within your reach. I mean, Karen, you mentioned you're not a technical person. You basically taught yourself how to do it. You found the folks who are doing it. Would you say most people who are publishing apps that you're dealing with are kind of like that? People who really had no great technical experience but now are successful at publishing apps?
Definitely. In fact, John, I can point people to an ebook that I wrote. It's called, it's also available as a print on demand. What is a book app and could you create one? How 27 writers did. And in this book, what I do is I take people through step by step what the process is, just so they can understand what the process is. And then 27 case studies of people who've turned their books into apps. And what's so neat about that is you can see how different and varied their projects are, how different and varied their budgets are, and what kind of challenges they faced, and what kind of developers they use. So it's a really good introduction to anyone who is just even a little bit curious about this space and wants to know if it's possible for them. And I should mention as well, I'm doing an update for this book right now. I've got 20 new stories coming from people who published their books in 2013 as apps. So very achievable. And a lot of people are like me and like some of the listeners. They're not technically inclined, and you don't have to be. That's one of the great things that I've seen over the last 3 years since I've been in this industry, is that there are more and more book app specialist suppliers out there, and even do-it-yourself tools that use just drag-and-drop technology. So there's no programming involved. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there, and it's just understanding the process.
Now, if people out there are unfamiliar with book apps, but they want to kind of play around with some, basically if you have an Android or an iPhone, cell phone, you can download apps, right? If you have an Android or an iPad tablet, you can download apps. Even if you don't, there are a lot of YouTube videos now, maybe we'll put a couple of links below this, that actually show apps in action. So even if you can't necessarily sit there and play with them, there's plenty of ways to understand exactly, because it's one thing for us to talk about how cool these apps are, but when you see them and you play with them, you realize, man, you know, an 8-year-old kid, given something like this to mess around with, is going to be enthralled. And after all, the idea is to enthrall kids with our books, isn't it? So I think it's a great thing.
Yes. Yeah. You make a great point. One of the things that when I'm talking with writers, I always encourage them to do is go download some apps or watch some videos so they can see what these book apps are like. And I'll provide you with a link. I've created a video that shows a number of different types of books that have turned into apps, from picture books to nonlinear storytelling books to comics and even graphic novels and poetry. So, you know, there are definitely, you know, different genre can fit within this format, and it's just about your creativity and bringing it to life. And yes, you're right. 8-year-old kids who see apps, or 5-year-olds or 9-year-olds get really excited about engaging in stories this way.
So let's make that maybe the first assignment for our people when they're watching this video, if they're coming to us new to apps, is don't worry about anything else right now. Just try to experience some apps. Go buy a couple of apps for your cell phone, for your tablet, go look at YouTube, but try to get your mind around what an app looks like, because I think that to any creative person, when they see the possibilities, their mind will start going. And they'll say, oh, I see how my story can make that. But let's take a second and talk about one of the things that I think that that Right for Kids exists to do is to help people move past this idea that print books are the only way to go, and that an app or an ebook is not a real book, so to speak. Our attitude is there's room for everything now. Paper books will continue to exist. They have a wonderful role. But certainly a parent or a grandparent can still put their child on their knee, pull out a tablet, and have that same experience, but maybe even more intense by looking at an ebook or an app.
Definitely, absolutely. I think there's role for both in today's world, and it's something to be considered. I think, writers do need to think about if their goal is to publish their work in some way so that it can be shared with others. Digital is absolutely a way to go, and you can still create a printed version. In fact, several of the people who are featured in the book that I showed you a minute ago published their books as apps first and then published their books in a print version after that. But you got to remember that the really exciting thing about the digital format is that, once you publish your book, you have got guaranteed distribution. There is no trying to find a distributor or no going around to the local bookshops trying to get your books shown or going to school visits. You can still do school visits, absolutely, but it's not the only way you have to distribute your book. As soon as your app is approved on the App Store, then it's got instant distribution globally. And that is just absolutely incredible. And you don't have to worry about any of the back end. If you're self-publishing, you don't have to worry about warehousing or shipping or whether or not you have enough inventory to fill an order if you do a promotion. So it's just that freedom is very exciting, and you're going to reach an audience.
That's really one of the things that we try to talk to people about also is this mentality that, well, everything's harder now because you have to do it yourself. You have to market your own books and all that. Well, I think that it comes, first of all, from a kind of a bit of mythology, which is somehow every author 20 years ago basically got to sit in a cabin and write their books and send it off to a magical agent who then took it and everybody did all the work for them and they just collected royalty checks. And unless you're J.D. Salinger or Harper Lee, it never really quite works that way. But in reality, it's so much easier now because of what you just said. The idea of getting instant distribution. To anybody who's ever self-published a book and tried to get distribution in the past, to compare that experience to uploading your finished product to the App Store and saying, I'm done. My distribution is over. Let me go out and promote. That's incredible. Yeah. And it is easy. It's so much more convenient and takes so much less time and allows the author to do more creative things.
Yeah, and there are options as well to work with suppliers who will put the app on iTunes or in Google Play for you as well. So you don't have to think you have to do it all yourself from a production perspective. And yes, once that production's done, it's done. The other really neat thing is that for authors who have published work that's out of print, they're able to bring that work back to life again and bring it to market. So I just did a video interview with Hazel Edwards, who's one of the most accomplished authors. She's published over 200 books internationally. She's one of the most accomplished authors in Australia. She has published 4 of her out-of-print works that are classic as apps, and it's just brought those works to life. And, she had to work through some rights issues, and I talk about that in the video interview. But, there's a lot to learn, and she's one of those. When I was talking to her, she has been in the industry for, I think, about 50 years, so a very long time. And she was talking about how there is this myth that it used to be that authors didn't have to market. She said she's always had to market, and now she's got all these new tools. And that's what's really exciting, too. So not only can you produce your work in a different way that takes you to a global market, but you can also market in ways that are free through social media and through things like that. So, we are so lucky with what we have. And the book app community is a very warm, opening, and welcoming one. And that's one of the things I love about it as well, is we support each other. And we have review sites that are interested in our work. And it's about that community and helping to bring the work to the public so they're aware of it.
Now, you also mentioned that authors, even traditionally published authors by major houses, end up having to essentially do their own marketing. And, of course, the thing is they're doing their own marketing to get 15% of the sale. You're doing your own marketing to get essentially 100% of the sale. So even though that your apps or anyone's apps they might look at an app and say 99 cents, $1.99, $2.99. How do you make a living off of that? But the reality is, if you're having a book being sold, published and sold through a traditional publisher and distributed, you're getting 10 or 15% of the net. You're probably making less per book, and it took a few years and all that. So, it really, I think, again, there's a bit of a misunderstanding about the money part of it. Let's talk about that for a second. I know here on Write for Kids, we're going to talk a lot about impacting children and that being a key reason why people should write. But, of course, people also want to make a living and they want to be compensated. Can you make a living? Can you make good money if you have a successful app?
Well, let's talk about theory and let's talk about reality. And then I want to come back to what you were saying about the 15% and the 100% and timing of payment as well. But first of all, can you make any money at this? Yes, if you have an app that goes big, of course you can. There are hundreds of millions of tablets and smartphones out there. So if you even have a fraction of 1% of the market, you're talking about big, big numbers. The reality, though, is that very, very few apps are going to be that big. So most apps do not make lots and lots of money. Apps are not a license to print money. Marketing is absolutely essential. And that is one of the big myths in the app space. People think, I'm just going to stick it on the app store and then, wash my hands of it and that's it. And that's the biggest myth. It's so not true. In fact, what I always talk about is starting your marketing early. And again, marketing is not about marketing your app, buy my app. It's not buy my app. It's what your app does for the reader and establishing your platform. It's exactly like book marketing. People, think they're going to print their books and sell millions of them, and they don't, and they wonder why. And it's because they haven't set up their platform well, and then they haven't marketed their book or their book app. So it is hard to make a living with one app or even a couple of apps. The people who are really doing well have a lot of apps, but it's always possible for that one magic app to really take off. But you look at the book world, the game world, the utility app world, there are very few of those apps that really go crazy.
But that's, of course, just reality for any kind of business. Nobody gets rich on one thing. You have to become professional. You have to build a career and build a library. But the point is, if people get to a place where creating apps is relatively simple for them, they could be they could be creating apps, every couple of months. They could be let their creativity run wild.
Absolutely.
There's nobody to stop them. That's the beauty of it. There's no one to put up a red flag and say, you can't do that. You can do it. It's really remarkable.
And I said I was going to address the money thing as well with the percentages. And, when you're talking about an illustrated book, that percentage is often even less than 10 or 15% because you're splitting with the illustrator, first of all. But the other thing is that when you're traditionally published, you get paid maybe every 6 months, whereas when you publish as an app, you get paid about 2 months after your apps sell. So you get paid monthly, and maybe 2 months max. You have money straight into your bank account, and you haven't had to manage anything. And the other thing is returns. I have had one return out of the 10,000 downloads we've had, one return, and it was because you do categories in apps, and you have to choose which category you are, and it's based on whether or not there's bad language and that sort of thing. So I'm in a really young category, and someone bought one of my apps for a really, really young child, and they said, it's not really for a really, really young child. And once I explained that, they actually rebought the app. So
there you go. So zero returns.
Wasn't really. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Again, just to remind, one of the things I want to keep saying to people as they watch this is the beginning. It's the beginning not only of our relationship with Karen on the site, but it's the beginning of Write for Kids. And don't worry about stuff that you don't know about yet. We will get there, including book marketing. Yeah. And we will talk a lot about it. And it's actually one of the things that I'd like to do is I'd like to eliminate the phrase book marketing and instead call it book advocacy, because that's really what it is. You are an advocate for your own book. If you create something that you think is beautiful and deserves to be read, it's not drudgery to go out and market. It's advocate. Go out and be a hero, be a champion for your own work. And it's fun, and it's creative, and it's communicating with other human beings. So I don't want people to get all uptight about marketing, because in fact, the way we're going to teach it and the way we're going to present it, we have some wonderful experts. It's going to be fun. It's going to be part of your creative process as much as anything. You will learn a lot and communicate. So don't worry about it, folks. If the idea of marketing a book freaks you out, because you're not going to be marketing it, you're going to be advocating for it. We have just a couple of minutes left, but let's talk about what kinds of books make good apps. Can within the children's range, from board books going through young adult, from nonfiction to fiction, multicultural, historical fiction, what have you, can an app be suitable for almost any kind of children's author?
Definitely. It really can be. And in the link that I'll provide for you, you'll see fiction, nonfiction, poetry, picture books, etc. It's my feeling that some of the best apps are, of course, they have some kind of visual. It can be illustration or it can be photograph, but usually it's illustrated. And my favorite types of book apps are the ones that bring the reader into the narrative, into the story. And so the interactivity, you have to engage with the app in order to progress the story in some way. And my two book apps both do that, and they're designed that way on purpose, because I'm designing them to engage a child who is a bit of a reluctant reader. So just any type of book can be turned into an app. And it's one of the things that I'll talk a lot about, and we'll have it in a future session, is how do you actually review your manuscript or review your existing book if it's already published in a printed format. How do you review that project and then adapt that to the app format in the best way possible? And so there are all these different things that you look at, and again, step by step, you look at it, you think, okay, what kind of narrator might I need? Is it should it be a male voice, a female voice? What kind of accent? How do you make that decision? How can I bring the reader into the narrative? And you think about that, and what should be animated, and it's just step by step. But how do you take that manuscript and deliver a multisensory reading experience that's beautiful and affordable to do? And that's one of the processes that we will be, or one of the videos that we can talk about in the future, or I can make for people at Write for Kids.
Yeah, I think, and that's really, again, one of the great things about Write for Kids, our ability to be able to do this, where we can bring on folks like you who have already asked all those questions and answered all those questions for themselves, and now you can just lay out the template for our folks so they know, okay, here's what I need to do to get this app going. And the other thing to point out is that any kind of author, there's some people that are do-it-yourselfers. They like to get under the hood and they want to do it themselves. And if you are that way, we'll give you the tools to do it yourself. If you need help with parts of it, we'll direct you to people who can help you with part of it. Or if you say, you know what, I've got other things to do, I want someone to create this app for me, we'll have some solutions there too. So it's not an all or nothing thing. You can really choose, depending on your willingness to invest time or money, how much involvement you personally have in creating your app.
Yeah, that's right. There's an option for everyone on how you approach this. I'm the type of person that I like to be creatively involved, but don't make me get involved in the technical stuff. And so this type of suppliers that I work with are people who handle all the technical stuff, but then, I work directly with the illustrator and with the narrator. But, it just, whatever your personality is or whatever your project management style is or your needs are, you will be able to create an app if you decide you want to. And there are tools out there, suppliers out there. These are all things that we will cover in Write for Kids.
And also for people to remember that creating an app is just another, tool in your tool belt. Because you, Karen, have created physical books.
Yes.
So there, you still can you can take the same project and have it be a physical book, have it be an ebook, and have it be an app. And they could be similar and yet different. You could add, what's in your physical book can be brought to an incredibly new level when it's in the app, but it's still at the core of the same book. So it's not an all or nothing thing. You are not an app author and only an app author. You're a children's author who happens to also create apps. And I think that's the way we want people to look at it. It's just another medium to communicate with kids.
Exactly. It is. And it's just in a new and enhanced and different way. It doesn't mean that print books are any less, or it's just different. Yeah.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun as we explore this subject and as we present solutions to our people. And I want to thank you. We are going to now for folks who are readers of Children's Book Insider, who are paid subscribers to our monthly newsletter, Children's Book Insider, and members of the CBI Clubhouse. We're going to continue our conversation. We have a little bit of a bonus section where Karen and I are going to talk about the biggest mistakes that people make when creating apps. So if you're a CBI member, there'll be a link below to go onto this Clubhouse and see the bonus section. If you're not a CBI member, what are you waiting for? Come and join us. And we have tons and tons of stuff, and you will always get bonus goodies like this from all our experts. So for those of you who are not members and won't be carrying over to the Clubhouse, thank you very much for watching. And for those of us who are, we'll see you on the other side.